be a bus operator or any type of employee in a transit public service type of business, our purpose is to transport them from point A to point B in a safe manner.
They have to be totally alert. And, if they're under the influence, then, everything is slower. And their reaction time is slower.
And if you are under the influence of an illegal substance or an alcohol, then you shouldn't be out there.
What we're going to take a look at today is reasonable suspicion, making the decision to refer one of your employees for drug and alcohol testing. It's not necessarily an easy thing to do, especially if you worked your way up the ranks. How do you tell an employee, someone you worked with for years, that you're referring them for a reasonable suspicion drug and alcohol test? What we're going to do today is give you the tools and the information to do that. The bottom line here is safety and saving lives. The Federal Transit Administration is required to issue a rule requiring recipients of certain FTA funding to train some supervisors on reasonable suspicion determinations on safety-sensitive employees for prohibited use of drugs and misuse of alcohol. This program will define reasonable suspicion, describe the standards for making reasonable suspicion determinations, and provide guidance regarding employee interviews in a reasonable suspicion situation.
I have no problem in pulling somebody out of service or taking somebody down for a test.
It's a call you have to make, because if you make the wrong call, you just make the wrong call. But if you make the right call, then you've made the right one.
People realize that if they wanted to continue in this field, they're going to have to be subject to certain rules and regulations.
It's your job as a supervisor to make the reasonable suspicion determination for employees performing safety-sensitive functions. The key phrase here is performing a safety-sensitive function. An employee's job description or job title is not the sole qualification here. We're talking about any employee performing a safety-sensitive function, whether or not that function is specifically mentioned in their job description. There are 5 major categories of employees who perform safety-sensitive functions. First are employees who operate revenue service vehicles. Second are armed security personnel. Third, non-revenue service vehicle operators who hold a commercial driver's license. Fourth, employees who do maintenance on revenue service vehicles and equipment used in revenue service. And finally, employees who control, dispatch, or move revenue service vehicles. These employees must not use alcohol while performing a safety-sensitive function, 4 hours prior to performing the function, and up to 8 hours following an accident or until the employee undergoes a post-accident test, whichever occurs first. FTA regulations clearly state that ingestion of cocaine, marijuana, opiates, amphetamines, and PCP is prohibited at all times. If there's reasonable suspicion that an employee is performing his or her job while under the influence of drugs or alcohol, or both, he or she should be immediately referred for testing, breath tests for alcohol, and urine testing by a certified laboratory for illegal drugs.
The man that's an alcoholic may have been an alcoholic for years, and you don't even know it, and he's worked right beside you. But you just keep your eyes open to the everyday normal activities that people do, and it will show up sooner or later.
The referral must be based on specific, contemporaneous, articulable observations. That means what you see right then, and that you can clearly explain the behavior, speech, appearance, or body odor of the covered employee.
When we observe someone on the floor who we think is either under the influence or has a problem, at first it's hard to make a call because you really don't want to finger somebody out. But then you have to do it for the good of everybody and for the good of the company. And after it's all over with, it is a good feeling to know that you did help someone.
Only one supervisor's opinion is necessary to require a reasonable suspicion test. But to be sure, keep in mind the reasonable and prudent rule of thumb. That means a similarly trained and experienced supervisor in the same situation would come to the same conclusion based on the appearance, behavior, speech, or body odors of the covered employee.
Generally, I like to have another supervisor confirm that with me, or if that's not possible, I try to think, well, if another supervisor was sitting here, would they come up with the same conclusion based on the same set of circumstances?
It really comes down to saving lives. After all, drug or alcohol use by transit employees in safety-sensitive positions generally leads to one thing: disaster. Accidents like these, lives lost like these, it doesn't have to happen if we spot and help drug and alcohol abusers before they hurt themselves or others. Any employees exhibiting signs or symptoms of prohibitive drug use or alcohol misuse should be immediately referred for a reasonable suspicion test.